What's up, everybody? Joel's back with another reasoning session where I challenge the status quo of the wisdom of the world and the church by diving deep into the ancient scriptures and applying them practically to situations in our present day. And today I'm going to be talking about the Antichrist agenda that has actually taken over mainstream Christendom.
Come now and let us reason together. Come now, we can talk it over.
Now, this episode for sure is going to rock a lot of boats, but if you don't get any flack for speaking the truth, then you're not doing a good enough job. And I'm about to expose the people standing in the place of Christ who are actually wolves in sheep's clothing, the devil impersonating Christ himself. And that's really why the mainstream Christianity has such a bad name, is because it's co-opted so much of this Luciferian agenda. But before I get into that, I just gotta say that if you like these videos, man, give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe for more content, because this message is accelerating, and honestly, exposing corruption is what the light is all about. Shining truth in darkness to inspire other light beings and to make manifest the world that we've come here to live in. Not a world of manipulation, coercion, and mind control, but the utopia of freedom, love, and truth. But with that being said, I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm going to be diving into the book of Iħezq'el, or Ezekiel in English, and we're going to be checking out one of his journeys in the spirit. In chapter 8, it says, "He beheld, and lo, a likeness as the appearance of fire, from the appearance of his loins even downward fire, and from his loins even upward as the appearance of brightness, as the color of amber." Now, interestingly enough, this is exactly the same thing that I saw in my out-of-body experience when I saw a being sitting on the throne surrounded by lightnings and rainbows and clouds and pillars made of pure gemstone and a rippling ocean of lapis lazuli. This being, literally the Ancient of Days, was Father Source, God Creator, that personality right before me. And it was so powerful, it was so... there's just no words for it, but the contrast between my being and that being was just, I was undone. But check out what happens to Iħezq'el. He says, "And he put forth the form of a hand, and took me by a lock of my head. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven, and brought me in the visions of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looks towards the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provokes to jealousy." Now, Iħezq'el was actually in the land of the Chaldeans, or in Babylon in exile. And this is where, like, literally the Spirit took him from one place and took him straight to Jerusalem. And this is what he saw. He saw an idol where there really should be none, because Source Creator cannot be put into an image. It cannot be defined in physical terms because it's non-physical and it transcends all of our limitations in the 3D time-space perspective. He said furthermore unto him, "Son of man, see you what they do? Even the great abominations that the house of Israel commits here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary. But turn you yet again, and you shall see greater abominations." So we think defining Source by physical means is such an abomination. Well, guess what? He goes on, "And he was brought to the door of the court, and when he looked, behold, a hole in the wall. And then said he unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I had digged in the wall, behold, a door. And he said unto me, Go in, and behold the wicked abominations that they do here. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the wall round about. And there stood before them 70 men of the ancients of the house of Israel. And in the midst of them stood Yaazaniah, the son of Shaphan, with every man his censer in his hand, and a thick cloud of incense went up." Now, a bit of backstory here. Shaphan was the scribe that read to King Josiah the book that was found in the temple after years and years of the kingdom of Yehuda falling into apostasy. And it was upon reading this book to the king that Great Reformation began, and they actually started to implement the code of the law of Moses, because even the Passover wasn't even practiced in the kingdom up until that day, since the days of the judges. But what Iħezq'el sees here is that the people have venerated even the worst things of what the code is actually telling them not to even partake in. That has actually taken a status of veneration. And it was actually Shaphan's son, the very scribe that was so instrumental in these reforms, to actually go back against that and be instrumental in this kind of backslidden state of apostasy. And we can see that when bad becomes good and good becomes bad, that's the first step to actually twisting society. The word wicked actually means to twist, like a wick or wicker work. And it's the twisting of what is good into a perverted state where what's good is bad and what's bad is good. But check out what happens even after this. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was toward the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. And Tammuz refers to the ancient Babylonian mystery religions, because you can trace all the mystery religions back to Nimrod, who was the original Gibborim, which actually refers to a whole bunch of weird stuff like genetic manipulation. And he was like literally the original Satanist. He married his mother Semiramis, and when he died, Semiramis had a child which she claimed she conceived of as a virgin, and that son reborn was named Tammuz, which was literally Nimrod come back to life. This was the beginning of all mystery religions, and everywhere in the world, this same image of a mother with her child, which literally embodies the son being reborn, is the foundation of all mystery religions. And we're looking at the same exact thing in Christendom, and I'm going to get to that in a bit here. Because he says, "Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn you yet again, and you shall see greater abominations than these." And he brought me into the inner court of Yahweh's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of Yahweh, and their faces toward the east, and they worshipped the sun towards the east. So here we're talking straight up sun worship. And this is what it's all about. This is what's infiltrated Christendom. And Yahweh calls this straight up abominations. Well, who's the mother of all abominations? In the Apokalypse, the woman that sat upon a scarlet colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And it even goes on to define this beast when it says, "Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits." And what city sits on 7 mountains? Just kind of do your own research, because in Jesus' own words, he says that many shall come in my name saying, "I am Christ," and shall deceive many. Well, who's claiming to be the vicar of Christ in the earth? This is straight up the one who actually stands in the place of Christ. The word Antichrist doesn't actually mean against Christ. In the Greek, that word anti literally means in the place of or instead of. Like Jesus said, they're going to claim that they are the Christ, but they're going to mislead many because they are not the Christ. Just using that name because nobody's holding them accountable. And even in the letter that John wrote, it says, "Little children, it is the last time, and as you have heard, that Antichrist shall come. Even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time." So the Antichrist isn't just one person, it's that identity that actually steps in the place of Christ and says, "I am Christ, listen to me." And isn't it quite interesting that the word Antichrist isn't even mentioned in the Apocalypse, but the beast is mentioned? And if you compare what the beast is and what he does, well, that's literally this whole organization with the guy with the fish hat at its head running the whole show. Actually, it's the guy dressed in black that's running him. And honestly, the gloves are off, man, because this is what it's all about. If nobody's talking about this, then the corruption in the way of Christ cannot be exposed. And everybody's going to think, well, they're just doing the same thing that others are doing. At the top of their organization, they're just as Luciferian as the Satanists or the Freemasons. But this is what the Jesuits actually are all about, because they stand in that place of Jesus, actually calling themselves the Society of Jesus. That's where we get the term Jesuit. But when you really look at it, they are Antichrist at their core. And they've infiltrated all of Christianity with pagan doctrines that are all about sun worship. When you look at the church and you see them, worshiping on Sunday, all of this stuff is sun worship. But sun worship isn't what Jesus is actually talking about. Sun worship is Mystery Babylon that's infiltrated Christianity through papal Rome. And it's all about believing in salvation through the Queen of Heaven and Mother Church, because they don't acknowledge the sacrifice that the Nazarene Christ accomplished by shedding his blood. And I know that I've talked about the white horse in the first seal of Revelation being, quite frankly, the pandemic, but that's the current unfolding of that facet of the fractal. If you actually look at it, the first horseman literally is the Pope. And if anybody's really speaking for Christ, well, the Vatican can't have that, because Christ literally came to divide. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not talking about the people that are Roman Catholic. I'm talking about the institution, because the people are just as deceived, and they're earnest. They're so sincere, man. I know Catholic. My family was Roman Catholic before we learned all of this stuff when I was really little. And I learned about that corruption at a very young age. And then I started seeing corruption, in mainstream Protestantism. But I realized that all of that corruption is not the defining nature of what Christianity actually is. Christianity is actually not that, and the real followers of Christ will be persecuted to death for talking about the very Jesuits and all of this kind of stuff that runs governments, that runs media, that runs education, that runs the financial systems of the world, and all world trade. Everything is linked to these undercover black-robed individuals, and they've infiltrated every religion with Mystery Babylon. Because when Babylon was destroyed, those cardinals, they went to Pergamon. And then when pagan Rome fell, the Roman Empire, they went to Rome and they established Papal Rome. It's the same people. They've infiltrated Judaism through the Babylonian Talmud, and all religions in the world come from this Babylon mystery religion, where you'll find this Queen of Heaven and Son Reborn symbolism. If you want to know more about that, check out The Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop, Babylon Mystery Religion by Ralph Woodrow, and Alberto Rivera, ex-Jesuit, who tells his whole story of his trading in espionage behind the scenes to infiltrate all the different Protestant branches, the truth behind how the Jesuits control Freemasonry, communism, Islam, all of that stuff. Everything mainstream is run by this one organization. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. And do your own research. Don't rely just because I said it. This guy knows what he's talking about. Man, go out and do your own research, make up your own mind, and see the truth for yourself. So I know this episode got a bit heavy, exposing a lot of the corruption, but that's literally the direction that Source is taking me in. And I'm not going to stop, because we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of her testimony. And hey, we cannot love our lives even to death. And when we can transcend that limitation in the physical dimension, we can totally move into the spiritual dimension and understand our real reward is in heaven. So I love you guys. I'll check you in another reasoning sesh. Joel signing out once again. Agape, Salaam, Namaste, Shalom.